Well, welcome back, everybody. Please, I hope you all had a very fruitful soapbox number 2. Sorry if we walked around and harassed you or whatever during the break. And we're getting close to, we can see the end. It's almost here.
So we're almost there.
Yeah.
A little bit longer.
I can see the end, and like a lot of people sort of just, I can also see like a lot of people just talking.
Well, you know what? Al Gore is going to come back, so everyone get ready for that. Al Gore and Tom Green, same time.
It's weird to think that a couple hours ago we were all just a bunch of brands and content creators, and now we all have large 7-figure deals to our name. It's like a weird thing.
I don't know if anybody has a 7-figure deal yet, but I'm sure a lot of positive first steps have been made.
However, remember that in the internet business, it's not about positive first steps, it's about taking leaps of faith.
Okay, don't be poetic with bad advice. Anyway, we're really excited about what we have coming up for you guys next.
A Sunday bar, everyone. You guys have thought you've had ice cream before, and some of you might have, but this is going to be a little bit different.
Okay, remember we said no to the Sunday bar.
Okay. Dang it.
Sheesh. All right, forget it. You know, coming up now, we have a panel discussion about creation, distribution, and measurement models hosted by one of the first journalists to launch her own online newscast covering the business of internet video.
Yes, Colonel Engineer Vladimirova Valentina Tereshkova was the first Soviet female cosmonaut in outer space.
Okay, anyways.
Okay, it took me 4 hours to memorize that name, and you're just going to gloss over it?
You wrote it down on your hand.
Okay, call me out on it, why don't you?
Okay, why don't we just welcome the host of New Media Minute, Daisy Whitney.
Daisy Whitney, everyone.
Thank you guys, and thank you all for coming. I guess this is the time that we have to get serious now. We've had our entertainment and our fun, and they've brought me on board to crack down and start talking about money. And I have lots of good questions, so I'm going to invite my panelists on stage and very briefly introduce them, and then we're going to kind of get down to business and just really start talking about how much money there is out there for branded entertainment on the web, who's spending money, you know, what are they willing to spend against, and you guys need to come on the stage now. I'm not going to do the panel by myself, so, or you can stay there in the corner. And I just have to point out that this is the first panel I've ever done where there are more women on the panel than men, so which is, how about that? And I think it will probably be that way for most of you as well. And of course, the gentlemen here are wonderful, and so are the ladies. I'm thrilled to have everybody. I have Tim Shey, who is the co-founder of Next New Networks, and I think most of you know Next New Networks. I guess I don't really have to explain what Next New Networks does, so that made it easy. Alex Levy is the director of branded entertainment at Google. I think most of you are familiar with Google, I'm pretty sure. David Balter is the CEO of BzzAgent, which is a word-of-mouth media company. And I have Amanda Richman, who is the director of digital with MediaVest. So she's in charge of all of the money and what gets spent. And then I have Dina Blip, who is the co-founder of Blip TV. So thank you all for being here. And I think at some point we'll take some questions from Twitter, which these lovely gentlemen will share with us. So I will just, spring them on me anytime. So I guess the first question, this is something that I've been thinking about a lot and have done a couple stories on recently. And there are a lot of different numbers out there in terms of how much money there is that's going to be spent in online video. The one that I've been quoting a lot in stories is a Magna forecast that says there should be about 699 million coming into online video in 2009. And I guess my question to you guys is, and I'm going to start with you, Amanda, as the person who holds the purse strings, is that enough to go around?
Is 699 million enough to go around?
Yeah.
Depends on...
Will it keep Jake and Amir fed? Will it keep Dina fed? I mean, is it enough for everybody?
You know what? It depends on how we see the landscape, I guess, evolving. One of our challenges, I think, these days is that there tends to be this conversation around online video separate from search, separate from display, separate from television, separate from other channels. And I think we need to think of it differently as really how are we spending dollars to create experiences, richer engagement, and get away from the form being the real deciding factor and thinking more about the experience and how we're going to build that, regardless of distribution channels, formats, etc.
So you're probably getting a lot of pitches these days. Obviously, we're here talking about digital, but we're clearly in the middle of the larger television buying and selling season as well with the upfronts, and there's, that's still a $70 billion advertising business. So how many of the deals that you're doing include both components? I mean, when you're putting something together for your clients, are there a lot of digital only deals, or are we seeing more sort of multi-package type of things?
There's definitely a larger appetite these days for video neutral deals, I would say, that may start in an experience that's rooted in digital. It may start from an experience with a screen. It's really understanding the consumer insights and then matching that with the right content and thinking less about what screen or what format it gets served up in. We're also seeing, I would say, a greater understanding and hopefully appreciation for the need to measure all of that, and not just in a video format, and understanding what drives that experience, what motivates people to take action, and less about just understanding what's the delivery. Think of video not just as this awareness vehicle, but what is that as a prompt to actually then drive the action we want. I think Mark Stewart talked about this as well. It's just the starting point always needs to be the consumer, and working from that consumer insight and working beyond just understanding if we reach them, but what do they want to take action with? How can we understand what their needs are, and how can content fill that gap a bit further? And ideally measure through each of those stages.
So measurement, I'm glad you brought up measurement, because we're going to talk about that a lot today, because obviously it's very important for agencies. Now, Tim, how are you able to measure viewership, engagement, and if you are you able to measure ROI? And what information do you present back to your sponsors?
Right. Well, you guys have no idea. So basically, that's the biggest thing that needs to evolve in this space is measurement, ways to measure ROI. It's what every single advertiser and sponsor asks. I think it's evolving a lot faster for this medium than it did for, say, cable television. There were years in cable television when Nielsen didn't measure it, and there was, they had to resort to all kinds of things to sort of prove that there was any audience there at all.
Hey guys, Jake and Amir.
We can't hear you
Right,
now.
sorry, a little louder. We've got real measurable audiences. Blip has measurement, YouTube has measurement. We partner with both Blip and YouTube and use their tools. One of the real tricks is how do we, build standards that everybody can agree on and that everybody can see. But the great thing is we know the audiences are there. You can see real scale. It's just a matter of us presenting that information the right way and making it clear to advertisers.
What's the right way? And is it the right way for every type of web show and web project?
I mean, I think that there's certain things that we like. For instance, we like to look at minutes of engagement. How many minutes are people watching the programming every month? We like to look at things like how many unique viewers do we have? And we can even measure like on a video by video basis. We can even measure on a video by video basis. Great. We're starting to get great tools. Oh, this is so much better. Thank you. So we're starting to get great tools from companies like Visible Measures and TubeMogul, YouTube, Blip. Everybody's starting to offer tools where we can even see the playthrough on our videos, and we can see where are people dropping off. And if we do 2 or 3 different sponsor placements in an episode, which were the ones that were effective? Hey, maybe that 30-second spot isn't such a great idea if the people are dropping off, but look, when the hosts were talking about it, people kept right through. So, it's one of those really exciting times where we actually have more measurement than television ever had, and we have all that trackability that, say, banners have, but, we've got the beautiful, engaging, experience that you can have with television. So,
what has surprised you most with metrics that have come back, or when you see something that didn't perform as well as you thought, or something that performed better? What have been some things that surprised you?
Well, actually, we just did a campaign with Verizon Fios called $99 music videos, and that was a new kind of content for us. We'd done how-to programming, which is sort of half what the show was, but we'd never done music videos, and it was fascinating to see how the engagement levels from one to the other. But there was our last episode, we had something like 93% engagement as measured by YouTube Insight and Visible Measures. People stuck through the whole episode. And I don't expect that. Most video, you see this big drop off in the beginning, and then you sort of hold people. And it let me know that for whatever we were doing there, we were doing right, and the audience that we'd found was really sticking with the programming. And when you see something like that, you've got something great. But I think that's the thing is that I'm in the development side, I'm in the content development side, and we think something's great. We fall in love with it. We fall in love with our producers and our hosts, but you know, when you actually see what the audience is responding to and where they're coming in, the fact that we get this instant feedback, we get comments right away, we get response videos right away, and we can see where they're playing through, it gives you really great tools for developing creative and getting better and better. And so, you know, what we've just done over the last 2 years is every time something seems like it works, we try to figure out what was it that works, and let's do more of that. And when we do it right, we see the views just go up and up and up.
So what you talk about in terms of 93% engagement, and Dina, I'm going to toss this question to you. It's an interesting point. It sort of reminds me, I've had conversations with Jim Lauterbach, the CEO of Revision 3, and he's a big proponent of reporting whole views. You know, he'll report sort of all views, but also specifically break out for advertisers that this show was watched through to completion. And Dina, I'm curious for, you know, for the type of shows that you have on Blip, which I know you have, you know, Revision 3 shows and obviously a lot of other shows. Is that critical?
Yes, and I think that, look, there are a few steps that are very important to the ecosystem that all of us are in right now. And one of that is that we need to all know what a view is. And this is something that we're working closely with the IAB on. I implore all of us in this room to encourage them to come up with a standard for what a view is. Right now, we're actually the second most conservative in the industry on measuring a view. The most conservative has been MediCafe, because up until a couple weeks ago, they were paying people per view, so they were very conservative. But I think that we need to establish that someone needs to click play on something, rather than having something just auto-played, perhaps in a banner ad that may not be in their field of view on a website, and the video needs to begin loading in order for that to be counted as a view. That, you know, may sound crazy, but in order to give Amanda and the clients that she's working with the absolute assurance that they are getting good value for their dollar, I think that that is absolutely essential. But there's some other tools that are necessary as well, and hopefully this will be just standardized across our whole web video ecosystem within the next year or so. There needs to be a company that we all rely on to measure those views. We're working with Quantcast right now. We think they're great. We hope it's them. If it's somebody else, so be it. We'll be very happy to partner with them. And then we also need people measuring, so not just aggregate views for all the Next New Network shows, Revision 3 shows, For Your Imagination shows, Blip.tv shows, but down to the actual individual show. Wherever that's syndicated, whether you're watching that on YouTube, watching it through iTunes, watching it on TiVo, on Fios, a Sony Bravia television set, or anywhere else, someone needs to track that. So I think TubeMogul has done a fabulous job coming up with a tool that was called Illuminix. It's now just folded into the TubeMogul platform, and they can track syndicated views of a show, which is very meaningful, so that Amanda can go back to Wrigley's or Continental or any of the P&G brands that MediaVest is working with and say, here's how many views you've gotten of the ad that ran on this video. Here's who's tracking it. We can prove this to you. And then the third step is having brand lift surveys. So we work with everyone from Dime Store Media to VzzAgent, Dynamic Logic, Insight Express. Hopefully there'll be a standard on this, and it can measure, I mean, some of Amanda's clients may want purchase intent. Some of them may want brand recall. They have all sorts of different goals that they're trying to reach. But whatever those goals are, we need to ask people, are you more likely to buy this product? Do you remember this product who advertised on this video? And give you an exact answer for what you're getting for your buy.
So, Dave, are standards a good thing when it comes to online video and advertising? Because obviously we all know that there's a company in the TV space that does measurement. And I think that, you know, Nielsen probably does as good a job as anybody can do, but there's certainly a lot of questions about whether it's truly effective and truly representative. So as much as I think that standards make sense conceptually, I wonder if we're just sort of, if we talk about moving towards standards, are we just mimicking something that we've done in TV already? What's your take on that? Because you're kind of operating across a lot of different platforms.
Yeah, so I think standards are important for people and brands to get comfortable with what they're buying. I actually think, though, we're sort of at the edge of the cliff as a sort of industry, as marketers and brands, to figuring out what we really want to do. On one hand, you get every marketer and every vendor saying that they have to be ROI oriented, right? Forget about, did someone see it? Did they actually take action? And so, you know, on the other hand, you've got people who are saying, let's come up with standards, let's come up with, you know, what a basis for a good impression is, or what a basis for all these new mediums, you know, how do they actually get represented in some standardized measurement metric. I think this is some schizophrenia in that, which is everybody who's selling services out there has to figure out how to drive ROI. And if that isn't happening, all the standards in the world actually don't matter. And the future that we're all seeing and that we're all in front of is, yes, the plans of yesteryear that measured all the eyeballs and everything else that was going on, we all now know, you know, don't really add up to enough for marketers and for brands to see a return. So I would argue standards are great, but if you don't have ROI, the rest of it doesn't really matter.
And of course, I think we're definitely operating in an ROI-driven economy in general. And Amanda, I want to ask you some questions about that in a moment. But Alex, talk a little bit about some of the things that you're doing with Google, because in a way, you're operating essentially sort of as a matchmaker for brands. And we were talking beforehand about some interesting campaigns I think you have rolling out right now. Can you share a little bit about what you're doing, and then also how you measure the effectiveness of that?
Well, I mean, we can all agree that it does obviously go back to ROI.
Can you guys hear her?
Yep.
All right.
I think we can all agree that ROI sort of is that universal holy grail, and we need to be able to define it. But it is defined differently by every single client. And some clients have very specific view goals and impression goals, and clients might think that those are their goals, but then as we're able to introduce other options and other ways to measure campaigns, we're able to show how many people subscribe to a campaign, how long they spent with it, how many times they forwarded it to a friend, how many people responded, how many people created their own video mashup of those videos. Those are other ways and other measurement tools that just weren't available before, and they're continually being introduced. And frankly, there are so many different ways to measure a campaign that our challenge is to define sort of what makes the most sense for that client, and how can we help them build and sort of draw that direct line between the campaign and the results. And that's not obviously easy yet, but I think that we sort of are, it's incumbent upon us to share the results that we have and to be facile with them and to be able to translate them into ways that are most helpful for the client.
Give an example of a campaign, excuse me, that you've worked on and the type of results that you were able to share.
Yeah, so I think maybe many of you in this room are familiar with Seth MacFarlane, who's the creator of The Family Guy, and what we did with Burger King and the Cavalcade of Comedy. And I must say that that probably safely exceeded our expectations and those of the client, and probably of Media Rights Capital, who is the content creator, working with Seth MacFarlane as well. And we ended up with in excess of 30 million video views, which is pretty spectacular. It was the #1 most viewed brand channel on behalf of Burger King. But those are kind of pretty, again, those start to be the quantitative obvious measures. The really neat things are how many people created their own mashups of Seth's videos. We created a tool, it's called the auto dub, so it makes pretty much sense, you know, have it your way with McDonald's, with Burger King. So how can you have it your way? How can you create, you know, sort of your own cavalcade of comedy? And just seeing how much time was invested in that campaign, I think there's no way sort of to say to a client, hey, you know, more people mashed this video up than anything else, and sure, we can provide those metrics, but it's just taking that step back and saying intuitively, my goodness, look at how many people took the time to create their own videos, you know, sort of, and to participate in this contest. And this is no longer the days of 100, 200, you know, people uploading their videos. This is thousands of people participating in this contest. And I think that just to see that, and to see how engaged people were with the content, was pretty remarkable, and made us realize sort of that if you have meaningful content, that people will respond, and ultimately that will drive results. And again, we can help with the direct line, but marketers are going to have to kind of help us fill in those gaps too.
So, Amanda, does this ever feel overwhelming to you? Because from where I sit, I would think my brain would be fried about getting 500 different reports. I mean, it's all great information. It sounds like the, you know, purchase intent and ROI and engagement and how many people created it. And so it's sort of an embarrassment of riches. But how do you sift through it all, and how do you decide, okay, for this campaign, I need this, or is that the way it's supposed to be, that everyone should be that tailored?
It requires a laser focus, and I think focus and simplicity is definitely a theme in the last few months, given the economic landscape. So making sure we ask the question at the start, what will success look like? And then how will we measure that? And what success look like, again, always has to be informed by what does the consumer need? How can we engage and reach out to them? it is an embarrassment of riches. And I think it's incumbent on us, though, to understand how do we tell that story and knit together not just the behavioral metrics, the attitudinal metrics, the ROI and sales metrics, into kind of a DNA string and figure out what matters and what triggers will drive the action that we want.
Do you want standards then, or do you want to have just sort of this wide smorgasbord of data so that you can pick and choose?
I think there's a difference between, as we talk about TV standards being a monopoly in the Nielsen world versus standards plural in our world. I don't think anyone's looking for one silver bullet, one magic measurement tool that will translate across all mediums. But what are the various ways we can look at it, but link those back to what is the goal, what is the role of online video or the campaign itself. And you have to be open to really mixing and matching and be much more nimble in this space and not just look for a single way to measure as a single form of success.
Now, can you give an example with one of your clients of an online campaign that they've done and how ROI was measured?
Yeah, actually for a number of campaigns we've worked with not just measuring ROI on its own, but then getting to that space. So if we think of the role of content in driving awareness and all the metrics associated simply with delivery, and click-throughs, yes, we still count those, but it's one of many metrics. Then the role of content moving from that awareness into more engagement and activation. And that's where, especially in content, the lens is much more focused there on the time spent, understanding not just minute by minute like television, but second by second. Where did we lose them in the storyline? What could have changed? Can we test different models there to keep them there longer if that's the intended action? And then how do we layer that into, hopefully, sales data, whether that's market mix modeling through the client side, whether that's working with a Nielsen home scan and really trying to understand all the way to the sale, did that advertising influence them? And then bring that story to life and really understand what can we do differently next time. And I think that's the key missing piece often too, is taking what you learned and reapplying it, and not just leaving it as the story on the shelf of the campaign success. But what are we going to do differently? And ideally, what can we do differently the next week, the next month, and have this be more sustainable, to use Al's term.
I want to talk about challenges for a minute. And so this is going to be a question for Dina and for Tim. And I want you guys to think about, what is the biggest pushback that you get during your pitches to advertisers? What is the, whether it's a pitch that, for whatever reason they didn't sign off or they did, but what are the things that they say to you, like, well, I'm not sure. Do you want to start, Dina?
I can start. One of the great things about the world that we're in right now is that we've traditionally only gone after the digital dollars. And the media buyers that you're talking to are very familiar with search, and they're very familiar with display, and they're just starting to think about video. But there is absolutely now that opportunity to talk to the TV buyers. And there's no question that those buckets are much larger than the buckets for digital. So that's a great pool to play in. This is a horrible set of metaphors, so my apologies for that. But here's what the TV people say. Okay, we know what TV gets us. We've been buying TV for decades. We know our surveys that we use. We've been using dynamic logic forever. We know it's a tiny sample size and they're asking, lots and lots of questions, but we trust that. So why is it that we should spend a higher CPM to buy web video when we just don't know? We don't know what we're going to get. So I feel like it's so important for all of the web video platforms to make it very clear that we're not in the business of having advertisers think warm, fuzzy thoughts about our content. We're in the business, and actually I have a ban on swearing at Blip, so I'm now going to violate it. But we, as web publishers, are in the business of helping advertisers sell shit, and that's what we're in the business to do. So as long as we can show them... Now I just violated my own company policy that I put in place, so my apologies for that. So here's what I think needs to happen. I think that we need to do some very academic, very serious studies, apples to apples comparisons between campaigns that are run on web video and campaigns that are run on television. And yes, we should run brand lift surveys on them, whoever we choose to do. We also absolutely must compare the actual purchasing and what is the difference in purchasing. And at the point that we do one of these studies, and at the point that we have solid numbers on here is what the ROI, specifically on people buying stuff, I'll say, from a TV campaign versus people buying stuff because of a web video campaign, then I think we'll see some solid reallocation of dollars from television to web video, but we have to do those studies.
Tim, same question for you. What's the pushback?
Well, there's probably two. You know, one is just when you first get into the table, and you know we're responding to a lot of RFPs, and we're getting in there. You know, it's pretty rare that we're actually competing with somebody that looks like us. It's pretty rare that we're going after the same advertisers that College Humor might be, or the Blip might be, or you know, that somebody else that's sort of in web video. We're always having to be an advocate for web video as we're doing it. So you know, when someone's trying to make a decision to invest some dollars and sponsor some of our programming, they're not just making the decision, you know, among a series of web video choices. They're saying, should I do this, or should I do a banner ad campaign on Yahoo, or should I do a Google AdWords campaign? You know, we're not really even a category yet. So every one of us, and Dean and I have talked about this, and you know, every one of us, we're not just going out and trying to sell ourselves. We're trying to sell the whole business. You know, we're trying to sell this whole new media, and that's a lot to put on the shoulders of any salesperson or producer or creative person that walks in there. So that's one thing. Is that part of the pushback is just letting them know that we're out there, and that there is professional content out there in web video. So we're all doing that. And then I'd say that the other pushback is that the very things that make really great web content, web television successful are things that we also have to get advertisers comfortable with. So for instance, what makes us great is the fact that we get instant feedback from our audience, that they can comment, that they can respond, that they can remix the stuff, that they can do all those things. And a lot of the advertisers that we really want, who have the big dollars and have the great brands, that's a big step for them. And so again and again, and it's luckily we've done it so many times now that I'm very comfortable. We had a very big advertiser ask about this. They said, hey, we're really excited about this. This is the first time our brand's going to be doing something like this, but can you answer a bunch of these questions for us? And they were the same questions that, you know, our friends at Starburst had. They were the same questions our friends at Verizon had, and they're good questions. You know, what do you do when people put comments up that you know, that bring up questions about the brand? What do you do with profanity? What do you do with all these things?
What do you do with those things?
Well, you know, we moderate them, you know, for one thing, you know, but at the same time, you've got to let people respond. When you do the Starburst campaign, for instance, with Night Fight, if somebody had said Starburst is the worst candy in the world, would you let that sit on the site? You know, I wasn't in charge of moderating that part of things, but I think that we actually let a conversation go, and what was surprising was that wasn't the kind of pushback we were getting, and that wasn't the kind of feedback. We saw a lot more about things like, wow, I can't believe Starburst is doing this. Wow, you know, and those are the kinds of conversations that were great to get. You know, we generally...
Of course, Starburst is a very good candy.
Well, no, but in general, you know, we actually do have a policy with things like commenting that, you know, if anybody's just out to just make someone feel bad, you know, if they're just deliberately insulting or deliberately not, we wipe them out anyway. I mean, that's just something that we do, and it's never kept things from rolling. But I think that you got to let things go a little bit, and you got to let people talk about it and give you honest feedback about the integrations you're doing and the kind of brands you're bringing in and the kinds of ways that you're bringing advertising to the show, because that's how you learn to be more effective. So you know, but so far, you know, we've done several of these campaigns, and it just gets better and better. And what's great is, you know, once you've answered the question a few times, you can answer it again.
Now, Alex, question for you. Advertisers, of course, not all of them, but in a lot of cases, advertisers want scale. And, you know, as I talk to media buyers at various agencies, you know, one of the things that they often say to me is, yes, you know, I'm interested in, you know, the type of shows that a Next New does, or that are on Blip or whatever, but they still are expected to get, you know, 10 million impressions or reach, you know, 50 million people or whatever it is. So I guess the question for you is online video, I mean, clearly Google, we know as a company, has scale, but is online video even about scale? Can it be about scale, or is it just that's down the road for us? Oh.
So you guys can hear. It's funny, I was actually just talking to a client about that earlier today. And they said, well, you know, the thing with digital for us is that we spend all this time in TV and we can make this much impact, and today we still can only have this much impact in digital. I said, I just can't get the reach the way I will get reach in TV immediately. And I said, well, you know, I hear what you're saying. I understand that you're spending so much time in TV, but if you do think about reach and you do think about the scale that we can provide, and from Google's perspective, we have both YouTube, but we also have the Google Content Network. When you think about the Content Network is reaching over 75% of internet users from a broad scaled perspective, and then you think about within that, the fact that we can reach any target audience. It could be moms, it could be guys 18 to 34, it could be tweens, but whoever that is within there, we can find there are a lot of each of those segments within 75% of internet users. And sort of in terms of a tactical way to reach them, we also have something that we call a blast. It's not really it's no more complicated than that, but it's about pushing out messaging across the whole Google Content Network in a matter of 24 hours, and we can reach over 100 million people that way. And Papa John's did that recently during the NCAA basketball championship when they're launching a promotion, and they just pushed their messaging out across the internet to guys wherever, whenever they wanted, sort of to see the message. It was there in front of them. So I think that the internet can absolutely, I mean, I feel like I'm talking about, sort of the internet as if it were 1985 or something, but it absolutely can provide scale. And I was pretty taken aback sort of at the perspective that I think traditional brand advertisers have that, well, I get my scale from TV.
Well, but to some degree, I mean, we're all drinking the Kool-Aid. I mean, I use that phrase a lot, but I think it's true. I mean, we're all sort of believers. That's why we're here. That's why you're here. But I think it's important. Oh, I guess I need to wrap things up pretty quickly. I think it's, I'm getting different. Wow, it went from 7 minutes to 1 minute. Okay. Anyway, so I've got to get you in another question, Dave.
I want to address something on this scale sort of concept. So I'm on I think every marketer out there wants big scale, but there's a distinction between scale and engagement. So I'm on a Facebook page the other day. It's for one of the brands here, P&G. It's for Pringles, and they've got 2.7 million people joined up to the page. They've got scale. So I'm going around the page, and I come in a section that's upload your Pringles photos, and there's a couple of guys eating Pringles and doing stuff. And then I get into this section where there's these paintings. They're sort of surreal. They're kind of freaking me out. They're kind of cool. I don't know what to make of them. I think maybe it's a Pringles thing. And I realize that what's happened is because this audience is there, somebody's realized that if they just upload their art, they're going to get lots of people who check it out. Okay? So now what's happening here is, I think, in our world of trying to get anything that has scale, a lot of people are realizing that they can use that and do different things with it. And in this user-generated world where people are creating videos or creating Facebook fan pages, this becomes more of a problem, much like email spam became a problem in the early days. So I would say scale is awesome. I mean, anything with scale that ties to ROI is great, but marketers should be more focused on the engagement practices. If someone's just saying, I like this brand, or someone's just sort of hanging out, that may not drive any return in the long run. They may be doing something else with that type of scale. So I'd be careful about getting caught in sort of the scale trap these days, because users may be there for a reason that marketers don't expect.
Well, I think I should honor the clock, and it says it's 0 and it's flashing, so I want to give everyone a chance to move on to cocktails and to videos, and to thank you all for coming, and to make my very quick solicitation, which is I love news sources for stories. If anyone wants to share a story or tip with me, daisywhitney@gmail.com. Thank you all for being on the panel. Thank you all for coming.